The Wyoming plains stretched endlessly under a pale winter sky, a vast expanse of frozen grass and snow that seemed to swallow everything in its silence. Caleb Turner, a man in his late 50s, knew this land better than anyone. He had been born here, raised here, and had spent the better part of his life running his family's small ranch. But now, the ranch felt emptier than ever. His wife had passed away 10 years ago, and his children had moved across the country, chasing lives he had never managed to live for himself. All he had left was Bear, a large black and white sheepdog who had been by his side for 12 loyal years. Bear was more than a companion, he was family, a living connection to a past that was slipping away. Caleb and Bear had a morning routine that neither one dared to break. Bear would wait by the door as Caleb brewed coffee, always attentive, always present. They would check the fences together, watch over the small herd of cows, and then sit by the fire when the wind howled across the plains. Life was simple, quiet, safe. Until one morning, Bear didn't appear at the door. Caleb called his name. Nothing. He walked to the barn, checked the pens, the pastures, and the edges of the property. Nothing. Bear was gone. Panic rose in Caleb's chest. He saddled his horse and rode for miles, scanning the horizon, calling, whistling, praying for a response that never came. The days grew longer. The nights, colder. Caleb stayed awake listening for the familiar bark that never came. Snow covered Bear's tracks. For the first time in his life, the plains felt hostile and alien. The loneliness pressed in on him like a weight he couldn't lift. 3 weeks passed. Caleb's hope had dwindled, replaced by a heavy sorrow. He would find Bear, he told himself, but deep down he feared the worst. And then, one evening, as the sun dipped behind the distant mountains and painted the sky in streaks of orange and purple, a sound cracked through the cold, a bark. Caleb froze, heart hammering in his chest. "Bear," he whispered. The bark came again, closer this time. And then he saw him, Bear, thin, his coat matted with snow and dirt, running across the snow towards Caleb. Relief surged, nearly bringing him to his knees. But something was different. Bear didn't leap into Caleb's arms as he always did. Instead, he stopped a few yards away, tail stiff, ears perked, and barked sharply once. Then, as if beckoning, he turned and began walking toward the distant ridge, looking back to ensure Caleb followed. Puzzled, Caleb mounted his horse and followed. Bear moved with purpose, not wandering aimlessly like a lost dog might. The sun was nearly gone when they crested a small rise and saw her. She stood near a broken fence, wrapped in a thin, tattered coat, shivering violently. Her dark hair fell in tangled strands across her pale face. She looked utterly exhausted, her eyes wide and frightened, scanning the horizon as if hoping for salvation to appear. Bear ran to her, brushing against her legs, barking softly. She didn't flinch, only stared at the dog as if seeing a miracle. Then she looked at Caleb, stepping back instinctively. Caleb dismounted slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. "It's okay," he said gently. "You're safe now." The woman spoke softly, her English halting and heavy with an accent. "Please. I lost, no food, no way." Caleb's heart sank. She was a stranger, alone in the middle of the Wyoming winter, miles from any town, miles from help. He could see the fear and fatigue etched into her every line. "Come inside," he said. "We'll get you warm." Bear nudged her again, encouraging her forward. Slowly, cautiously, she followed Caleb to the small ranch house. Once inside, Caleb set a pot of water on the stove and wrapped her in a thick blanket. She trembled, not just from the cold, but from sheer exhaustion. "You're safe," Caleb repeated. "I'm Caleb. And this is Bear." She nodded, words catching in her throat. I am Lynn. "Lynn May," she said finally. "Lynn May, okay," Caleb said. "Where are you from? How did you end up here?" She swallowed hard, glancing at Bear as if drawing courage from the dog. I traveled, alone, from China. I wanted a new life, work, but, lost in storm, no way to find. Her voice faltered, and tears welled in her eyes. Caleb sat beside her. You're safe now. No one will harm you here. Bear led me to you. He paused, amazed at the truth in his own words. Your timing, or maybe Bear's. Something told him to find you. Lin Mei shook her head, overwhelmed. Dog, so smart, he helped me? Yes, Caleb said softly. Bear never loses anyone he cares about. Over the next few days, Lin Mei began to regain her strength. Caleb helped her settle into a spare room. Bear stayed close to her, lying at her feet, always alert. Slowly, Lin Mei began to help with the small tasks around the ranch, feeding the cows, chopping firewood, mending fences. She moved with careful precision, a quiet diligence that impressed Caleb. The winter stretched on, and with it, a new rhythm formed. Caleb found himself talking more, laughing sometimes, the silence of his home slowly giving way to warmth. Lin Mei shared stories of her homeland, her dreams, and the hardships she had endured. Caleb listened, fascinated by her resilience, her courage, her kindness. Bear watched everything, his eyes always knowing, as if understanding that something miraculous had occurred. One evening, as the sun sank behind the snow-covered mountains, Caleb and Lin Mei sat by the fire. She held a steaming cup of tea in her hands, and he looked at her, realizing how much his life had changed in the span of a few weeks. You saved me, she said quietly, looking at Bear, then at him. Your dog, your kindness, all of this, saved me. Caleb smiled, a rare warmth spreading through his chest. No, he said. Bear saved both of us. Maybe he knew what we both needed before we did. They sat in silence, watching the flames dance in the hearth. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, harsh and unyielding. But inside, the little ranch house was filled with light, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings. The rancher who thought he was alone had found something he never expected, a companion, a friend, a connection. And it all began with a dog who refused to give up, who refused to let anyone face the cold world alone. In the end, it wasn't just the dog that returned. It was hope, life, and the reminder that even in the loneliest places, miracles could happen when you least expected them.